me. Thank you. Welcome everybody. First meeting of the Borough Plan Committee for 2023. Item 1, the evacuation procedure. We have a member of the public, so I will go through it. Ask you to ensure that you're all signed in on the sign-in sheet provided. They'll be used in case of an emergency evacuation. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and don't use the lifts. Once out of the building, gather over the road at the Lloyds Bank building on the opposite side, or Virgin Money as it is. Exit the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded for future publication on the council's website, so can I please ask you all turn off your mobile phones or turn them to silent for the duration of the meeting. Item 2 is apologies. I have an apology from Councillor Kenner. Not aware of any others? No. Item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 14th of October. Is everybody happy I sign those off? Yes, I see no dissent. Item 4, declarations of interest. Does any member have any interests that are not included on the schedule? No? Okay. Public consultation. I have speakers on item 6, 7 and 8, although I'm not sure Mr. Gearing isn't here. No? Do we have a statement from him? Yes, Councillor.
I assume he's stuck in the traffic. He did ring me and ask where the parking was, so I expect him to arrive at some point soon. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Can I ask, during the public consultation, you'll be asked to speak on each of the items. You know the score by now, Mr. Smith, 3 minutes. If you can keep to the subject of the particular item that you're speaking of. Be most grateful.
It'd be nice if the people in here could do that instead of giving snide remarks as well, wouldn't it? Aye.
We don't need
Every
that sort
time
of
I call.
comment, thank you.
Well, I get stupid snide remarks constantly. Yeah, and you tell me to stick to the subject.
Can you switch mic off, please?
Do it with these, and that's fair enough, ain't it? Let's be fair about it. Yeah?
All I'm asking...
Once again, this council have failed to consult the public. The use of council staff time to tick boxes that this council wanted ticking is a real problem with this administration. Ignoring all the real problems.
Mr. Smith, we haven't started yet. When I come to the item, I'll introduce you to...
You'll have to speak up, mate. Or turn it up a bit.
Can you switch your mic off and then maybe mine will work? Thank you. I will introduce you, when we introduce the item, I will call you to speak after we've had the introduction. Yeah. Right, item 6 is the Borough Plan Review Preferred Options Consultation Responses. I have noticed on the recommendations that we refer to this as a Regulation 19 consultation. If we can amend that in the minutes, because it is actually the preferred options consultation, which isn't a statutory consultation. That's fine. So, Sarah, over to you if you can introduce the item. Thanks.
Hi. The agenda item provides information to update members on the responses received to the Preferred Options Borough Plan Review consultation, which took place between June and July last year. As set out in the report, the Council received a total of 112 responses from statutory consultees, other local authorities, agents, developers, councillors, MP and groups and resident associations. Officers have been reviewing, processing and providing a response to each of the comments received as set out within Appendix A. The comments received will feed into the Regulation 19 publication version of the plan review. The comments relate to a range of policies and themes within the preferred options document. A high-level summary of these comments is provided within Table 1 of the report and outlines issues such as the need for housing evidence to be finalised, as well as other evidence-based documents such as transport, and the need to address neighbouring authorities' unmet housing needs as part of the duty to cooperate. Other comments relate specifically to sites, either promoting sites not allocated, supporting those that are allocated, or supporting or objecting to those sites which are proposed to be removed. Further responses relate to specific policies and the need for refinements or additions to the wording to address issues. All of the issues and suggested modifications proposed by the consultees have been reviewed and, where considered appropriate, will inform the next stage of the Borough Plan. It is recommended that committee members endorse the consideration of the responses received during the preferred options consultation in the production of the next stage of the Borough Plan review. Members will also note that an addendum was circulated earlier today, or this afternoon, which included a further representation from Savills. So you should hopefully have seen sight of that as well.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. We have one public speaker on this. Mr. Smith, if you'd like to speak on this, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Once again, this council have failed to consult the public. The use of council staff time to tick boxes that this council wanted ticking is a real problem with this administration. Ignoring the real problems, with Severn Trent polluting the waterways in the area, which it has done for years and probably will do for years to come. This problem needs to be addressed before any further house building is approved. There is no local input. This is just a government-led scheme to build substandard housing across the country. This process is merely corporate politicians pushing a failed agenda at any cost, no matter how much damage it does to the towns of Nuneaton and Bedworth. Helped by useful idiots on councils across the country. Now, we need to stop building homes. These substandard homes are shocking. Yeah? There's no quality control at all from this council. They'll be unfit to live in within the next 8 to 10 years. All the social housing that you're having built. These problems need to be addressed. Stop pushing this government agenda constantly. Start listening to the people like it said you should have done. This should be stopped immediately, this whole process, because you have not consulted the public as you said you should do in your documents.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Does any member have any clarifications they'd like from that statement? No. Okay. We'll move on. So we've had the recommendation. I'm happy to propose that from the chair. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter-Payne. Thank you. So we're now open for debate. Any councillor? Councillor Condicle.
I'll make a start. I've only had a quick read of these documents. I could obviously talk about the inquiries tend to last about 6 weeks, don't they, when we go through them line by line. But a couple of things did highlight to me I wanted to draw out. One was, as the member of the public was saying, the sewage networks. Severn Trent did actually have a very short response to this consultation, but then attached a very useful spreadsheet, which I believe has been circulated to members. And one particular issue we have in Wellington, and I believe quite a few of the other areas being developed, is the sewage network has not been upgraded since the 1970s. Our pumping station is 1972-ish. I've got the original permits from 1970. And we are just building more and more stuff ahead of the upgrade of the sewage network and the pumping stations. And when we have a rainy day, all that sewage and the rainwater that comes into the combined sewers goes into the River Anchor. And it's not just sewage because it's a rainwater, because we've got combined sewers. So I do hope that that document is taken really seriously and we can actually open a proper negotiation or discussion with Severn Trent, because what we need to do is know when the Weddington or the Bulkington or the Whitestone upgrades happen, so it actually ties in with our housing, so we don't just keep building housing that dumps sewage and rainwater into our rivers. It's the same on all the other infrastructure. And the other one I wanted to point out to committee members and the public was the stagecoach responses, because we've had horrendous troubles with public transport on our new estates and the town centre. And these will continue if we don't actually listen to stagecoach. I mean, I don't like stagecoach, lots wrong with them, but that they do actually want to carry passengers and make profit. And if we don't listen to them in terms of the rollout of the new housing, how we put bus services through the new estates, etc., we actually make estates that aren't serviceable by buses, which is not a problem when everyone moves in and they're rich and wealthy, but then they get older and then they get children and the demographic changes. So a new estate tends to have low bus use except for the affordable housing. But like on St Nicholas Park, that was built in the 80s, now there's an awful lot of people on there depending on buses, and I'm sure it's the same in Bulkington and Whitestone. When these places are first built, people are buying houses in their 30s and 40s, and getting the bus services right is just so important. So the consultation is useful in parts, but it's only useful if we actually then follow it up with looking at these problems and going through and trying to sort them out. And it's exactly the same with the railways, train services and everything else. So I hope the officers will give us some feedback in terms of where we go forward with, particularly transport.
Regarding the sewage, I did see that document that you referenced, and I found it very useful actually, and I know officers will act on that. Have you got anything to come back on?
It was only to reassure the council. Obviously, as part of the recommendation, we are saying that we're asking you that you endorse the fact that we take on board these responses received to the next stage where appropriate. So in the recommendation, that's what we're asking. We're committing to the fact that we will actually look at the representations, and where needed we will add to the document and take them forward.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Any other member? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. May I first start by saying thank you very much to the officers of this council, and together with yourself as portfolio holder, for putting together the borough plan and for collating all the responses to date, and obviously reproducing the documents that we see today, especially with the large amount of various bodies that have been involved. Given the size of this document, has been no mean feat, obviously. Also, there's a couple of points I'd like to pick out under the consultation. Like my colleague here, it's a very large document to read, and in all fairness, it's difficult for any person to pick up on every single item within that. There's a couple of points I would like to make. Firstly, something mentioned by the Canal and River Trust with regards to, and this would be appropriate to my fellow colleague at the front here, with regards to the National Cycle Network, and particularly to number 52, which runs through Coventry, right in theory through Bedworth and through Hawkesbury, Nuneaton, etc., etc. But there's an area there between Hawkesbury Junction and Bedworth that is, shall we say, not in fit condition to be utilised. But also the bridge there, which is referenced, which crosses there by the Hawkesbury pumping house, is in dire need of upgrading, shall we say. And hopefully that will be part thereof within the borough plan that happens. And so there is connectivity between that point on the 52 route 52. The other thing I was looking at was response made by Coventry City Council with regards to our duty to cooperate with regards to the number of properties, or buildings I should say, that our council takes on board. Obviously we're fully aware of the new revised HEDNA figures with response to that data, but there is a bill going through Parliament currently, the Living Up and Regeneration Bill, which says that removes the necessity for government to instruct on housing size or housing targets, and puts that basically back onto local councils. So in that respect, we are the local council, so we should know ourselves the requirements within our own borough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Couple of things there. Duty to cooperate. We've obviously, as we've been progressing, we're building an evidence base. I think we've made it fairly clear that we're not willing to go into our green belt to accommodate other people's housing. And it's pretty clear that our borough plan, when it's reviewed, will be a plan for this borough. So we're fairly clear on that. I don't know if there's anything for you to come back on.
I don't think so, Chair, because I think when we go on to the next item, we'll obviously cover the fact that we've basically done work that is very much about future-proofing for our borough and meeting those needs first.
Yes, so yeah, and I think on the other comments, in terms of the Hawkesbury issue, I think officers will take that on board, and they'll be looking at that response anyway, as part of the borough plan review.
I think only if we need any more detail on that, councillor, we'll obviously come to you directly if we need any more on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
I think it's also worth noting, Chair, that clearly the consultation exercise was before the HEDNA was produced, so it was a preemptive strike from Coventry City Council. Clearly, things have moved on quite significantly since then, and there is now a sub-regional proposal as far as HEDNA is concerned, and as Maria just says, it will be the next item on the agenda.
Councillor Chechevik.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'd like to sort of echo what Councillor Walsh has just said in thanking officers and yourself for the work that's gone into this document. I appreciate documents like this don't just put themselves together. It's a lot of hard work to go through and to produce this. And I was delighted certainly by the turnout we had in Bulkington of the number of residents that came to the consultation events, that took time to listen and talk to officers, to talk to myself and yourself as local ward councillors. And I'm really sort of delighted to see that we're noting about things like taking HSG 4 and HSG 7 out of the plan as we sort of develop it into the future. And I'm hoping that what we're looking to produce here is a very robust plan for the next sort of 15, 20 years within the borough, which is something I think we were perhaps lacking. And I think for the first time, it almost feels like we're starting to get to a position where we're going to start getting ahead of ourselves into the long run. So I am sort of quite pleased by that. Colleagues have already mentioned about drainage and about buses, which is what I was going to touch on, but I think they've already covered that. And I think the other point I wanted to raise, Maria's just said, I think we're going to move on to next in terms of looking at sort of what order things happening and the HEDNA numbers and what comes from government legislation in the sort of months to come. I mean, for me, the sooner we can get this in front of an inspector, the better, because the sooner we get a verdict and the sooner we can hopefully get areas removed and we get a new plan and a new direction that's perhaps more tailored and suitable for the borough. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for that. Councillor Baxter-Payne.
I just wanted to make a comment following on from Councillor Condicor's point about the suggestions coming from other groups. I think if you read the actual officer responses in the consultation document, it shows in there that, you know, we are listening, because there's things noted as considered reasonable amendments, comments noted, change of wording on policies. So I think that clearly shows that we are listening to what the public and outside bodies have said to us.
Yes, thank you, and you're quite right about that. That we didn't have to do this consultation. It wasn't a statutory consultation. It was something we decided to do, so we could incorporate comments into the evolving document. So yeah, as an exercise, it's been very useful in shaping what the future borough plan will look like. Any other member? Councillor Condacor, you want to...
Yeah, I was just looking, because obviously I made lots of comments, particularly on things like net zero and things, which I hope we won't go forward with a plan that's not net zero. But also in here, it's got KK and then NBBC. It doesn't actually point out that I'm actually a councillor, so it'd be useful in these documents to actually work out who's councillors and MPs when people are making a suggestion, rather than just say KK, NBBC. Because it looks like I'm making a council response in the way it's tabulated.
Yeah, I'll actually pass over to one of my colleagues, because this was a bit of a debate that we had to have with other officers in the council. So, Sarah, are you okay to respond? Thank you.
Hi, yeah. That came down to our data protection. So we've been liaising with our data protection officer, and I think on this case they advised that we just do initials, but then if we put another caveat going forward in the consultations, then we would be able to display full names. So that's the reason that everybody's down as an initial as opposed to titles and... Yep.
Yeah, no, the point wasn't so much my initials, it was actually that I was a councillor, so, because obviously councillors and MPs and things aren't necessarily just ordinary members of the public. We do actually represent people, but we don't represent the council, so that's why it sort of almost shouldn't say MBBC, it should say councillor or something. So.
Okay, I get that, and it's far be it from us to elevate you to the status of MP as well.
At the moment.
You never know. Any other member? No? Okay, so we can move to the vote. You've got the recommendation. Committee endorses the consideration of the responses received. And if we can alter that from Regulation 19 to a preferred options consultation. All those for? Against? Oh, I think it's unanimous, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Moving on then, agenda item 7 is the Housing and Economic Development Needs Assessment. So over to you again, Sarah. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah. This agenda item seeks to update members on the housing need figure and employment land requirement for the borough, following the publication of the housing evidence-based documents towards a housing requirement for Nuneaton and Bedworth, which was published in November, and also the sub-regional HEDNA, published in October, and both of those have been appended to the report. Members will recall that the preferred options consultation proposed a housing requirement of 9,690 dwellings, equating to 646 dwellings per annum, and a total of 82 hectares of employment land. These figures were taken from the draft HEDNA, which was prepared by ICENI and published in May 2022. The Council, alongside Coventry and other Warwickshire local authorities, commissioned ICENI to prepare a sub-regional assessment of housing and employment land needs. Planning practice guidance states that strategic policies should be informed by a local housing need assessment, and that should be conducted using standard methodology unless exceptional circumstances justify an alternative approach. The sub-regional HEDNA derives away from standard methodology and models new demographic projections which take into account the latest 2021 census data across a 10-year period, which allows for a longer economic cycle. Using this approach, the housing figure for the borough was calculated at 409 dwellings per annum, which is lower than both the 646 dwellings, which we consulted on as part of the preferred options document, and also the standard methodology figure of 435 dwellings. Similarly, a much lower figure of 47.7 hectares was identified for employment land in the sub-regional Hedna. The key reasons for the differences in these figures relate to the publication of the 2021 census data, which looked to address previous inaccuracies in the ONS estimates for authorities within the HMA, and also the use of 10-year migration trends as opposed to 5-year migration trends, which were modelled within the draft HEBNA. Concerns were raised by officers around the use of the 10-year migration trends and also the need for the exceptional circumstances to justify a move away from standard methodology, particularly to a lower figure. Therefore, it was considered, given the aspirations of the borough, including employment growth and the need for affordable housing, a bespoke report should be prepared for the borough to supplement and be read alongside the sub-regional HEDNA. ICENI were commissioned to prepare a report that considers the objectively assessed housing need set out within both of the HEDNAs, as well as other considerations which may influence the Council's decision on appropriate housing and employment requirement. The report concludes that in relation to employment land, the findings in the draft HEDNA, which inform the preferred options consultation, provide a more locally specific assessment for the future need. Then, in relation to housing, to support economic growth and the delivery of affordable housing, given the significant level of affordable housing need in the borough, a housing requirement of 545 dwellings per annum over the plan period to 2039, which equates to 8,175 dwellings in total, is considered appropriate to positively support economic growth, the sustainable regeneration of the borough's town centres, and also the delivery of affordable housing. These figures will inform the Regulation 19 publication version of the Borough Plan Review, and it's recommended that the committee note the contents of the reports.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I'm down for 2 public speakers here, but I don't think Mr. Gearing has turned up, has he? Do we have a statement of him? Did he send a statement? No. Okay. So, Mr. Smith, if you want to speak on this item.
To address this report, it's well, a complete work of fiction. It bears no relevance in today's financial climate. I've seen that have clearly been asked to justify this corporation's insane building programme, where it is destroying every greenbelt area in the borough and destroying the town centres with unfunded programmes which replace what has been demolished, where shops are concerned, reduces parking supply, and a hotel and cinema, which we have both in the borough, that are never full. They also intend to add more space for the college, although this college has not been that successful in helping the children of this borough achieve any better skills. Those leaving our failing schools have not been served any better by this college. It's clear that no thought has been given to the current economic situation, where building materials increasing costs on a daily basis, interest rates are rising, broken road system which has already exceeded its capacity with the uncontrolled building in the area. Not to mention the fact that Warwickshire County Council and Nuneaton and Bedworth have failed for decades to complete any infrastructure project within budget or in the timescale designated to any project. This further proof that this report is not worth the paper it's printed on. The social housing part of this project are unlikely to be habitable by 2030, as a specification and standards they are built to are woefully inadequate, bordering on criminal, as the builders clearly have no quality control. The planned economic growth clearly has not taken into account the current economic conditions. Millions are pushed into poverty by interest rates, raised taxes and energy prices, rises which you lot will no doubt want to add to very soon. using the people around here as cash cows again.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We'll move on now to allow debate. The recommendation is... Mr. Gearing's arrived. We'll give you a moment to sit down. That's yeah, very good timing on your part. You've walked in just when we were going to move on, but I'll give you a second to get yourself together, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your statement to the committee. Yeah, quite happy for you to go first, Councillor Conacher.
Thank you very much, Chair. The original ICENI report just for us was done on really limited data. So I was really interested to see the bigger document for Coventry and Warwickshire. And if you look on page 165, there's a nice table there that shows the standard methods. And it talks about 352 houses being needed in the borough. But obviously, because they want to make more houses to catch up with backlogs and make houses more affordable, it suggests a number of 435. I think the Coventry and Warwickshire wide one actually has a lot of useful data in, and particularly because of the population demographics and converting it into housing, it's a good basis. And I do not get why this council is then converting that into 550 odd houses, because we will never manage to achieve the enhanced rate. I've always said the actual fundamental housing need in the borough is 300 and something a year. We know that from how many people we have, how many people are born, how many people die, and how many people on average migrate into the borough. And if you look at the births and deaths, we lost 1,400 people sadly last year, and we probably had about 1,600 born. So as a borough, we tend to now only generate a population change of 200 a year, which clearly would only need about 100 houses. On top of that, obviously, we want more people to have their own homes and people are moving for jobs. So fundamentally, I have no issue with having a borough target. There's not 100 houses a year, but 300-400 a year. So we actually get people moving into town and we have more affordable housing. But to go to 500 a year is just above what this borough does in the long term. Yeah, we have, when we built all the housing and went to St Nicholas, drawn in a lot of people migrating into the borough, but that hasn't helped the borough's population. The borough's population is still struggling to rent houses, still struggling to afford a mortgage. And I say this report is actually really good because it identifies 39%, I think, of the people can't afford market rents or market mortgages. So the problem we've got in the borough is not a physical lack of housing, it's a physical lack of money, jobs and opportunities to actually buy some of the houses or rent some of the houses we have. And as a county and sub-region, we have 13,000 empty homes in Coventry and Warwickshire. So we've been building houses at a rate at which we've actually been increasing the number of empty houses in the county very slightly, which means we've not been under-building houses in Coventry and Warwickshire. So I really hope we stick with the base report and don't try and overhype it with all this. We're going to have massive economic growth. And if you look at the economic graphs, these graphs that show prosperity going up and up every year are just mad, because that's not how economies work. Yeah, we're going to have a couple bad years over the next couple of years. Then we'll have 3 or 4 good years. And I really would like this council to stick with a 400-ish housing target a year. Anything else is just something we're going to have to fight. And you'll spend hundreds of thousands producing a borough plan, which then in 2024 we will try and vote down. So I think it's far more sensible to actually peg it back to reality and go for something in the 400 region. Thank you, Chair.
Any officers have any comment on that? No?
I think, yeah, just because obviously we do have to, you know, the councillor mentioned the affordability element. Obviously, I think if you look through that, the wider Hedner as such, you will see that in their calculations that actually the bulk of that 400 figure has actually needs to be affordable. So, you know, as part of the work that was done at the local level, it was looking at, realistically, no, we're not going to achieve that, but it's had to look at, well, how are we going to deal with that severe issue that we've got? So, you know, if we go back to the wider Hedner, we would be looking that we would be delivering over 400 of those houses to be affordable, and that is just not achievable. So I think that is the key issue in that. I think you've obviously mentioned about the economic side to it. I think a big part of this is also the levering up agenda. You know, we have got the north-south divide, and that was very key in the work that we'd commissioned at the local level. We've being a small borough, we've got a finite amount of land. So it's vitally important that what land we've got left to use outside of the green belt is really going to meet those needs into the future, so that we don't have to start looking to take others' needs.
Thank you. Director Richard.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to underscore that, really, if members do look at page 255 of the appendix, you'll see that the affordable housing requirement for the borough is set out there. Now, if you recall that the Hedner, based on the model that was employed by the sub-region, came up with a figure of 409 houses in total, you'll see that our net affordable housing requirement is 407. So realistically, in terms of market housing provision, we're talking about 2 dwellings if you go down that road. It's just not achievable. It will not, it certainly won't be deliverable, and I think it does place us in that tricky position where we have to do something a little bit different from the rest of the sub-region, because the need to have a viable housing provision has to address that. Totally accept the point that it's very difficult to achieve any housing target. That's always been the case, it always will be the case. But what is absolutely clear from a developer perspective is that you are not going to achieve it if you adopt those 2 figures as your starting point, which is why we've had to look at something different for this particular borough. And I think, as Maria has just said, with our aspirations for town centre regeneration, we're regenerating those town centres not based specifically upon the existing population. It's got to be with growth in mind, and you're only going to achieve growth if you build more houses and try and keep those people using their local town centres. If you don't, it's just not going to happen. It turns our town centres into white elephants, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Before we go on with the debate, Mr. Gearing, are you ready now to make your statement? Okay, over to you. You have 3 minutes. If you can press the big button on your speaker. The long button, that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I don't know where I'm coming into this discussion, but I want to set the scene that housing targets have all been abolished by Michael Gove. And I hope you're well aware of this, as has the duty to cooperate, which changes the entire landscape that you're looking at. You can choose your own housing target. Let me say that again. You can choose your own target. That the housing figures given by the Ministry and SMPP 2014 are only a starting point, and there are no mandatory targets if you read Mr. Gove's letter to all Tory MPs of December. Second point, there's no duty to cooperate, so there's no need for you to accept Coventry overspill homes, no matter what fantasies they tell you. And even if someone is twisting your arm, an inspector or the minister, Coventry can provide for itself. They have enough homes in the pipeline to take care of all the population growth they've had in the last 10 years and for a similar amount in the next 10 years. They built 12,000 homes in the last decade, and they have in the pipe another 13,000, double the number, more than double the number. You know, and on top of that, there are 6,000 homes in Rugby which have been identified under construction as for the benefit of Coventry overspill. So there's no need for you to rescue Coventry. Then going to the HEDNA. While it is better than the SMPP 2014, which is nonsense, it's still not based on good data. The HEDNA has accepted ONS birth and death forecasts, which simply do not follow reality. If you compare to the 2014 forecast, births have been declining for about 10 years, but ONS has them rising. And the mirror problem is true of deaths. In general, ONS has the expectation we're all heading for a happy future where everyone lives to 100, whereas in actual fact, life expectancies have been going down and more people are dying earlier on. And for Nuneaton and Bedworth, the bigger factor is deaths. It's out by about 10% or more per year, so that means over a 20-year planned period, you save the need for about 1,000 homes. You have every year about 150 people, more people dying than the SMPP projection forecasts. Now, the other important element of population growth is people moving to the shores of lovely Nuneaton and people departing from Nuneaton, sadly and reluctantly, for somewhere else. And in that respect, we don't have current data. Hopefully the census is going to give us more information about actual population movement. The best figures we've got right now are from the 2011 census. At that point in time, we know that sadly more people were leaving Nuneaton than arriving here, and a small number were coming from abroad. Well, we need an update. We haven't got it. It would be entirely premature to set a housing need without having the full figures from the census.
Have you much more to go? Your 3 minutes is up. I'm happy to let you finish if you're nearly there. I know you...
I think that actually brings me to a good point of conclusion. Do you have any questions?
Any member require clarification on that? Nope. Oh, Councillor Cundifer.
Yeah, I think it's worth just emphasising the point about more data from the census. When do we get this migration data, and can you just sort of explain what that will show?
In 2011, the census published a lovely table showing where everybody has gone when they've moved. So everybody who has left Nuneaton and everybody who has moved into Nuneaton, both from places in the UK and places abroad. Now, that table is called the Local Area Migration Matrix, I believe. But anyway, it gives you a good solid figure based on real information and not conjecture about where people have gone, how many have arrived, how many have left. Thus far, ONS has not published such a table for the 2021 census. They're still producing their data. I'm still hoping for it, still expecting it. I haven't seen it yet. And let me make a short comment on, you will see lots of other things that look like this table. But what you have to understand is they're based on guesswork. The ONS has been spectacularly bad at forecasting both, especially migration and population growth, because they are guessing in the dark for an awful lot of stuff. They pretend to be scientific. They trade on their reputation. But, well, as you saw for Coventry, they were wildly out.
Okay, I think we're sort of, I know you could speak on this for the next hour, but I need to move on, so I'll draw that to a halt there if I can. Thank you. Any other member? I've got Councillor Baxter-Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I was just a little bit confused by something that Councillor Condacourt said. If we have people struggling to rent houses in the borough, building less houses won't improve that situation, because an element of the houses that are built will be put onto the rental market. So surely building a sensible amount of houses will improve that situation for private renters. And if we're very careful, if we build less houses, the percentage of affordable houses will be lower as well.
I mean, obviously there has been a lot of emphasis put on births and deaths, but you know, this is what makes this so difficult, because there is just not one aspect you could look at. You have to look at all aspects. And again, just going back to the work that we commissioned locally, it was also looking at our housing register in terms of how that's rising, our level of homelessness. That was all put into this work.
Yes, thank you, Maria. Councillor Tromans.
Thank you, Chair. It would be a depressing outlook if life expectancies were going to, in this borough, fall when they're already below what should be the expected national average. There's a huge amount of work and effort that goes in by the Health Service, the county and a bunch of other organisations to try and improve the outlook for residents of this borough. I don't think we should belittle that and hope for that to fail. I think we should expect that that will work, and that, you know, there will be improving picture in terms of outcomes for people and life expectancy. And so that's the positive way to look at it, and we should have borough plans accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. In reality, it's following on from the lines of Councillor Tromans with regards to the age demographics. The public speaker said that the figures were falling, that people were, dying earlier, shall we say. Well, the real fact is that people are living longer in general terms. Prior to Queen Elizabeth's passing, obviously that they were sending out letters for those who have achieved the age of 100. There was a great backlog, apparently, because there were so many people actually achieving the age of 100, they could not keep pace with sending out those those cards. So the fact that we're being told that the age is coming down, it would appear the age is not coming down in terms of people's life expectancy. It is, in fact, increasing. Now, I know for a fact that a lady passed fairly recently, was 108 years old, and she was number 42 on the age list. So there's a lot of people that have exceeded the 100 mark in this country today. So these figures are a little bit skew, I believe, from our public speaker. Coming back to the actual identifying the requirements of houses in terms of the borough, we need to be looking at the actual mix of houses that are built in terms of requirements for numbers, as opposed to just building houses. Now, a lot of the build so far that I've seen around, the developers are looking to build the larger sizes of houses, the 3 and 4 plus bedroom houses, obviously high ticket value. But in reality, if we look at our figures, the biggest requirement is within the 2 to 3 bedroomed houses. And I think we should reflect that in our plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Maria, do you want to come back on that housing mix?
Yes, certainly. I mean, we have got a policy at the moment in the current plan where we do push developers to actually ensure that they're building the 2-bed and 3-bed in the main. Obviously, we have got areas where we need 1 bed. Obviously, we need to carry that on into the new borough plan, but potentially update it in line with how things have moved on. And I think you raised an important point, and it was raised in Gove's publication about planning for the elderly and the type of accommodation that they need in the future as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Shetterville.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to start by saying thank you to Mr Gehring for coming along tonight. It's always good to hear him speak. It's been a while since I've last heard him. And, you know, he's always talked common sense. This is the guy who took on Coventry's ONS numbers and won. And I think that deserves a lot of respect from all of those assembled here tonight, because he really has got the ball rolling on this. And I know your beans, Mr Gehring, as always. My concern is, though, that there's so many factors that we could be looking at here, and you're just concentrating on 1 or 2 limiting factors, and I think it's very, very difficult. You know, when I talk about indicators to my students at school, you know, I always teach them the more indicators we can look at, the more pieces of a jigsaw puzzle we have, and the clearer the picture that will emerge. So I think we've got to be very careful about just limiting the indicators that we look at to a very narrow range, which I feel is perhaps what you've slightly fallen foul of here. You know, it's very difficult to predict also future trends and patterns of what's going to happen within our society. So I think to cover itself, the council does need to keep it slightly higher than perhaps I would like to see it, because again, I would like to see a lower number, but I appreciate and understand why we need to keep that number a little bit higher, because we need to have that that area of flexibility should things change. And we're constantly seeing things changing. You know, we're seeing a rise in the number of students going into various secondary schools at the moment in some of our towns and cities. Okay, now that might be a short-term blip, but it may also be a longer-term trend or pattern, and that's just to say one of the many things that we would have to consider. I'd also like to say that in terms of the number of affordable houses, I mean, certainly social affordable 1-bedrooms, again, I would like to see a lot more of, because I think there is an increasing demographic who will want 1-bedroom and accommodation. We're seeing more and more people who are not getting married, for example, and staying single, compared to sort of previous generations. Again, I feel that they haven't really been catered for, and you know, sometimes even to get a 2 or even a 3-bedroom property maybe beyond their means. So again, I think we need to have the flexibility in numbers so that we can accommodate what lies ahead, and none of us know what lies ahead. It is all best guess, although that may be sort of, you know, informed guesses. They're still sort of guesses, and we need to have that ability to change and to react. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any points, clarification on that? No? No, quite happy with that. Councillor Condicord, did you indicate to come back in?
Yes, I was mentioning a few comments and I wanted to just come back on them. In terms of the ageing demographic population, there's a useful table on page 197 which shows how far out the population projections were. And you see that the problem starting at 75 onwards. Yeah, we have actually got a few people in the country living to 100. It's not that as a problem. It's the lifestyles, pollution, all the issues. We're actually losing life expectancy in that 75 to 85-year-old band, particularly in the area. And we're probably losing about 150 people dying early a year in this borough compared to where we should be if the trend had continued. So it is something we need to work on, and we need to understand we are plateauing in life expectancy and we are not gaining. The second point was about how many houses we needed to get affordable housing. Actually, one of the key things is the big population rise is in the over 65s. So actually, it's actually building housing for extra care homes, and adapted houses that are lifetime houses. So we're building the wrong housing mix to actually get the housing to help for these older people as well. And in terms of affordable housing, you talked about almost all the housing we need is affordable. Actually, what we need is actually the people to be better off, so they don't need affordable housing. So a lot of the economic stuff of creating jobs actually means people can afford a house rather than having a problem because they're too poor to do anything other than being a council house. So it's very, very misleading to say we need 400 affordable housing a year. We actually need people to be better off.
Thank you. And on that last point, you raise a good point there, because this is a plan for economic growth. And economic growth will produce jobs, will increase wealth, and will make the homes more affordable for people. I think if we can agree on anything, is there are so many ways of looking at this. No one way is right, but we need to find our way through that and come up with a formula that's fit not for Coventry, not for Warwickshire, but for Nuneaton and Bedworth, and that's what we think we're doing with this.
I think, Chair, just to add to that, obviously when we're looking at affordable, we are thinking about the older people, because there is often, when we look at extra care provision, there'll be an element of that will be affordable extra care, because even if you're elderly, it doesn't mean you've got the funds to not need an affordable requirement. So more and more extra care provision, shelter provision, they are providing an element of affordable in there as well.
Thank you for that. Councillor Condicker.
Just on that, and what Lub was saying, we need some provision to be flexible upwards. We can always approve planning permission that are more than the target we set ourselves, if they're a good application. What you want is a modest target that is sensible, and then if you get an application coming forward for an extra care home or whatever, yeah, if it's a good application, the planning committee will approve it, because the borough plan target and planning policy only sets the minimum rate you build at. If someone comes with a wonderful suggestion, you can approve any planning application you like. So don't think you have to set a high target to get more houses built. If you set a low target and a high bar, then good applications can be built.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other member want to come back in? No? All done. So the recommendation is just to note the contents of the report. All those for? Against? No abstentions, that's it. Yeah, we'll note the objection. Right, moving on then. Agenda item 8 is the site assessment for the publication of the Borough Plan Review. Over to you, Sarah.
This agenda item intends to update members on the site selection process going forward, which will inform the Regulation 19 version of the Borough Plan Review. Members will recall a number of strategic and non-strategic housing sites and employment sites form part of the preferred options consultation document. As noted earlier, given the publication of the sub-regional HEDNA and the bespoke housing report for the borough, which identifies a reduction in the housing requirement from the figure previously consulted on, as well as further information coming to light following the review of the representations received during the preferred options consultation, there is an opportunity to review the sites selected to ensure that all the sites are deliverable and sustainable in accordance with the definitions set out in the MPPF. Each of the housing sites allocated within the preferred options document have been assessed to determine whether they should be taken forward to the Regulation 19 version of the plan, and the sites submitted during this consultation have also been considered. Given the strategic nature of the plan, officers have proposed to remove sites below a 10 dwelling threshold, which is considered appropriate given the strategic nature of the plan, and that any sites that benefit from planning permission or are under construction will be considered as commitments / saved allocations in the Borough Plan Review. Appendix A attached to the report outlines the latest assessment on each of the housing sites. However, it's worth noting that this is a work in progress and the final capacities may change. In relation to employment sites, it is not considered that the economic development sites will be reassessed, as the figure remains the same within the preferred options document. It's worth noting that in accordance with national policy, the Council has a duty to cooperate when preparing or supporting the preparation of policies which address strategic matters. Given the sub-regional HEDNA was only published in November 2022, no authority within the housing market area has formally said they cannot meet their own housing numbers as yet. However, as authorities progress with their local plans, we anticipate this may change. In terms of next steps, the site assessments carried out need to be finalised, and then they will inform the next stage of the review. It's recommended that the committee note the contents of the report and the site selection process undertaken to date and endorse the selection process moving forward to the Regulation 19 version of the Borough Plan review.
Thank you, Sarah. Public speakers, I have Mr. Smith.
Right. Until you put in the regulation that you state you must have to proceed with any of this, yeah, the procedure for maintaining good public relations, including complaint management, public consultation and liaison. Tonight all you've talked about is corporate interests, yeah? Corporate interests, your interests, what corporate interest you've got in this, what profit there is for you, I don't know. But just remember, you only have the support of 2 out of 10 people in this borough. If the other 8 out of 10, if the other 8 out of 10,
Mr. Smith,
if
I can interrupt you for a second, we're talking about site assessments for the publication of the Borough Plan Review. Can you please speak on that
You're passing
subject?
everything through, right? Everything through. You still have not addressed this. You're putting your hands up like this means anything. If the 8 out of 10 people in this borough that do not support this council withdraw their funding, it seems to be the only way we're going to get any redress from you lot, because you never listen, yeah? You're sunk. You can't keep dictating your corporate stupidity.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, but can you switch your mic off? I'm not going to put up with that sort of statement in this chamber. It's uncalled for. You're not talking to the item. You have no comment in anything you've said that's relevant to the item we're talking about. So I'm going to close you down at that. Moving on. Any member? Councillor Condicker.
As is normal, I'll kick things off. There's clearly been a big change in the housing market, and what's viable will change quite considerably as mortgages have become less obtainable, and the economic boom we've had with right to buy and cheap mortgages, etc., and effectively government subsidised mortgages is coming to an end. We really need to look at this assessment to see what's viable and what will happen. And also, Table A lists the things that haven't yet started, but some of the things like Calendar Farm, which is quite a significant site, may never or may be built at lower capacity or change. So I would like to Table A to actually include the strategic sites that have actually not in that Table A because they've got effectively a planning permission, because that gives us an idea what the pipeline really is rather than just these. And things like Arbury Estate, that has had borough plan status for a very long while and hasn't even moved the slightest. So I think we do need to question whether this housing is going to get built. And then it comes back also to infrastructure. Warwickshire County Councils refused to build a station entrance on the Wellington side of the railway station. So it talks about Top Farm being deliverable, but we haven't got the sewage works, but hopefully we will one day. But the transport infrastructure, this needs to be tied in with an infrastructure plan that someone is actually going to bother to fund, that is sustainable and deliverable. And there doesn't seem to be an infrastructure column here. You just seem to say everything's deliverable. The final point I wanted to make is that sites are now also coming forward with more houses than originally anticipated. Obviously, we had a period of building very large houses, and we had sites with permission for, say, 200 that would deliver 180. I notice now we're getting sites here that are delivering about 10%, possibly more than the borough plan allocation. So I think we do need to look at the housing mix going forward, and obviously that ties back to the previous reports, as to see what we're going to deliver in future in terms of housing sizes, because then we actually get more actual numerical numbers per site. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any clarification on that?
I think I would only comment, all those things are going on to inform what we're doing, all the viability work, all the infrastructure work, all the specific needs. That's all part and parcel of work that is going on to inform us moving forward.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points regarding table 4.1 on 433, as you mentioned. Specifically within Bedworth. Where are we? Hospital Lane development, SHA4. The original capacity of the build was 398 as listed allocated. The application has gone through for 455. Now, there was a comment earlier from a response from National Grid regarding actually specifically Hospital Lane development because of the power lines that go through that plot. And obviously, if we're increasing the number allowed from 398 to 455, potentially the space around the power lines will be encroached more upon further. So I think it's something we need to consider, and whether we accept the increase in numbers for that application. And just another point, when it says about deallocated sites, can we explain that a little bit further? I'm not quite aware what that means, please.
Yes, thank you, Maria. Do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, just in terms of your last point about deallocated sites, basically we have got sites that are allocated in the currently adopted borough plan that we are looking to deallocate in this emerging plan, and will be deallocated once that plan, this new plan, is adopted. Is that?
Thank you. So that's those listed in the second portion of the table 4.1. Is that correct?
There we go, sorry. Yeah, so the table in 4.1, those deallocated sites are those that were in the preferred options document that we've gone to do some further evidence-based work on whether they're deliverable. And they've formed that table. So whilst they were in the preferred options, we'd be looking to remove those in the next stage of the plan as we've gone through them. As I said, it's still a work in progress, and Appendix A lists where those discussions have taken place with the reasons why they would be proposed to be deallocated at this stage. And they tend to be the non-strategic, the smaller units, because as I said in my report, we need deliverable sites.
Yeah, sorry. Obviously, since preferred options, we've actually scrutinised some of the sites that we put out, and actually we've decided that they're just not deliverable to move forward. There are, in the main, particular constraints. An example being there are playing pitches, and obviously we have got work going on in the borough about playing pitches. But, you know, in reality, would we really be looking to develop on those? And there have been other instances where there have been biodiversity, ecology issues that have come to light through additional work that's been done. So we've looked to take those out. So those are just examples of where we've basically moved on from the preferred option stage. Thank you, Sarah, and sorry I was slightly wrong in that.
I'll just come back on the other issue you raised, specifically the Hospital Lane site and the disparity of numbers. We've actually got an outline planning application for that, so that isn't a policy issue, that is now a development control issue, and ultimately it will come to Planning Applications Committee.
Thank you, Chair, for the clarification.
Councillor Conductor.
Yeah, coming back to adding things in and taking them out, the Manor Park school area, there's going to be an extra care home built there. And one thing we don't have any of these tables is all the housing that's care, extra care. There's a lot of things that adds to our housing total, which is actually stuff we really need at the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're going to have a table of that, because in our housing needs, that's the stuff the county council are building, care providers, is really important. And we have quite a bit of care homes being built, bottom of Judkins and things. So is it somewhere now I've missed?
I think with regards to that one, Jackie, that's the Manor community. Yeah, so that's got permission. So we're not proposing to deallocate that. That is that's there. It's the playing field, the Manor Park playing field, that we're proposing to deallocate the extra care home scheme.
Yeah, the extra care home was in the part that's already got planning approval for, which we've deallocated because it has approval for, and those extra care aren't within those figures. But yes, we could probably look at how we can put those figures separately.
I think, sorry, just to add that, I think you need to be clear, just because we're deallocating them, sorry, if something's got planning permission and we're deallocating it, it's not coming out the numbers, it's still there in the numbers, so the numbers will look at things that have been completed, things that have got planning permission, they'll all be there, the figures will still be there, but they just will not be allocations because they're already committed. And that is based on the guidance that we use as planners to look at these figures.
Any other member? No, we're all done. We do formally need to move this, so I'll move the proposal. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Baxter Payne. And if there's no other input, we'll move straight to the vote. The recommendation is to note the contents of the report and the selection process undertaken to date. And to endorse the site selection approach moving forward to the Regulation 19 version of the Borough Plan Review. All those in favour? And against? Thank you, that's carried. Right, moving on. Any other items? We do have one other item. Members will note that there was an addendum came out, I think on Monday, with regard to an update on the Borough Plan Review timetable. So we'll deal with that under any other items. Sarah, do you want to just tell us what that's about?
Hi. Members will be aware from the addendum that information has recently come to light which may have implications on the Borough Plan timetable going forward. The Regulation 19 version of the Borough Plan Review is scheduled to be published in April 2022 in accordance with the recently updated Local Development Scheme. The Borough Plan Review... 23, sorry. Still stuck in last year. The Borough Plan Review is supported by an extensive evidence base, and whilst the majority of evidence is now either complete or in process, officers have been advised by Warwickshire County Council that the strategic transport assessment, which can now be progressed following the publication of the HEDNA, is longer than initially envisaged. And the modelling on the proposed sites will take an initial 10 weeks, and then further time will be needed to liaise with National Highways to complete the report. The strategic transport assessment is a critical piece of evidence to inform the Borough Plan Review, and it also feeds into other reports such as viability and the sustainability appraisal. Therefore, considering the timeframes provided by Warwickshire County Council and the need for other evidence off the back of this to be completed, it's likely that the publication of the Reg 19 version of the plan will extend beyond April. We're awaiting further clarification from Warwickshire County Council in order to be able to set out when this will be likely, but we're pushing for as little slippage to the timeframe as possible. The recommendations are that the portfolio holder writes to the portfolio holder for transport and planning, and Warwickshire County Council seeking confirmation of dates for submission of the highways details, and the leader of the council writes to the leader of Warwickshire County Council in similar terms. Further, that a revised table will be provided with dates circulated to committee members once responses have been received, and that the report be taken to the next Borough Plan Committee seeking agreement for the revised timetable.
No, I am on there. Sorry about that. There are some next steps there, so there are some actions, so I will propose that from the chair. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Walsh. Thank you. Any member? Councillor Condicker.
It is clear from this new delay that the Conservative administration aren't going to actually probably get a borough plan adopted in their 3 years of control. So I do think we need to look at where the dates will lie in 2024 as we get to a new administration, so we don't land at election time and expect to have various things go on at the same time as a full council election. And obviously, I would like the plan to be a lot greener than I expect it will be delivered. So I don't want this council to develop a plan and then we'll have to fight it, and then we change control and it's all a mess. So I think we need to be mindful of that and actually make sure we try and do as green a plan as possible and look at how much it is slipping. And I'm really alarmed by the comments about the transport assessment, because it's all talking about traffic. The old plan had a 15% modal shift built in, which means that when we build houses, we assume that 15% more will change over to using public transport, cycling and walking than do at the moment. And that clearly hasn't happened for any of the new developments in Wellington and St Nicholas. They're entirely car dependent. No, some of them haven't even got bus stops. And so I do hope if this transport assessment is going to take a long time, it's actually a transport assessment rather than a highways assessment. And we actually look at the modal shift properly, what we're going to achieve. We have a rail assessment and a bus assessment and a cycling assessment as part of that process. So we actually make a proper plan, because we failed in the third-rate borough plan to actually have any infrastructure, and just doing the same again isn't actually going to get us a better plan. So I hope when you do write to people at the county, we actually ask not just for the highways modelling to do, but actually we have the modelling of the new railway entrances, hopefully a new Stockingford station. And really key to the borough and the modelling is if we get the Bay platform at Coventry and get the 2 trains an hour or 3 trains an hour coming up the line, because we will have no economic growth if we're strangled by not having all the transport options. So I do hope we really need to look at the full range of transport. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Jackie, you want to come back on that?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, in terms of the strategic transport assessment, I can assure you that sustainable transport will be part of the modelling. We were actually with discussions yesterday with Warwickshire County Council about the scoping for it, and their transport officer was there. So in terms of bus modelling and cycle networks, those will be taken into the consideration. The modal shift, we've retained it as such within the preferred options, and that may go to the publication of the modal shift that you were referring to. But Warwickshire Highways have confirmed that it can change from ward to ward. So we're basically looking at an average of over that. But yeah, we can assure you that sustainable transport is within that. They haven't mentioned trains, whether or not that's something Warwickshire County Council Highways can do, but I can go back and ask the question, and we can certainly enter into a dialogue with Network Rail as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Jackie. Councillor Tromans.
Thank you, Chair. I think on the modal shift point, this has been talked about a number of times in a number of different meetings at this council. The whole "if you build it, they will come" has turned out to be complete rubbish. You can build all the cycle lanes you like, but all over Europe they're digging them up and converting them back to roads because people just don't make that modal shift. They might walk, but we are not going to become a nation of people cycling to commute to Coventry. It just ain't going to happen. In terms of having to write and change the borough plan now on the basis of a change of control and it needing to be a green, much more green focused borough plan, wow. I would never disrespect democracy and take the voters of the borough for granted like that and assume that the Green Party will be in control, because it ain't going to happen ever. We should proceed on the basis of democracy. The people of the borough spoke last time. They gave a majority to a particular group who is bringing forward this review as quickly as is possible. And I think we should only proceed on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that. The team are moving at pace. Unfortunately, we are going so quickly ahead of our partners that, some of these other organisations inputting into the process aren't up to our speed. So we can only do it so fast. Hopefully, we'll see it through to the end. And in any case, we're looking to produce a first-class borough plan, not a third-class one. So, any other? Councillor Chetterby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to just say this in plain speak, really. Warwickshire County Council needs to pull their finger out on this one, and they need to get stuff done, because we've got residents who are now getting sick and tired of waiting and waiting and waiting for this plan to be submitted to the inspectorate. And we need to get this done as quickly as we can. I appreciate there is a need to get it done to the best standard, and I agree it should be a first-class plan and not the third-class plan that's currently in place. But equally, there is a need for some expediency as well on this. And I think when you're speaking to colleagues at Warwickshire County Council, please impress that need upon them. Please feel free to give them my phone number. I would quite happily speak to them at length on the need for this to happen as quickly as possible, because it's unacceptable. People are waiting and waiting, and a lot of people almost feel like they're putting their lives on hold to sort of see whether their site's going to get pulled out of the plan or not. And I think we need to appreciate and respect that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Totally agree with all of your comments. And we will try our best to accelerate the process so that they're working at the same speed we are. Councillor Condicle.
I must come back on the comment about cycle lanes being ripped up out all over Europe. That's simply not happening. You even now look in London at the great success of cycle routes being put in there. As long as you build a whole route, not just a couple of hundred yards like we tend to do in Nuneaton and Bedworth, cycling is taking off. But also it needs to be linked in with the rail services, because the model in Holland and France and everywhere else is you cycle to Nuneaton Station or Bermuda Park, and then you get the train into Coventry. Yeah, the vast majority of the longer journeys are done by train, and one train per hour, and no, it just doesn't work. So having a half-hourly or every 20 minutes train service, as Lub says, we need the county council to pull their fingers out and get those longer distance journeys done by train. But for the short 1-2 miles to the station, cycling is really, really popular, and it will be, maybe only 20%, 10% of the population, but that's 10 or 20% of the traffic off the roads. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got, you want to come back on that, do you? Yeah, I'll take you first.
Thank you, Chair. 20% of the population ain't going to be cycling. And I know Holland's flat, I'm sure you know all about flat Earth, but 20% of the population is not going to be commuting by bicycle. So it's as simple as that, and we can't plan on that basis. Yeah, absolutely, we need the trains to be running a bit more frequently on the Knuckle line. That is a major limiter. A lot of people would like to commute to Coventry that way, and it needs to be restored. Although we seem to be having all sorts of people throwing industrial action spanners in the work on that one. So that's a bit beyond our control and the county's, I'm afraid.
Okay. Councillor Baxter-Payne.
I think I had to come back on this point on modal shift. Modal shift sounds a wonderful concept. It sounds like a great idea, but it comes down to personal choice. We can put cycle lanes anywhere we want, but if the person doesn't want to get on his push bike and use it, they won't use it. If a person wants to get on a train, they will use a train. It's personal choice. And there is a prime example just down the road in Coventry. I spend a lot of time driving around Coventry where they've put cycle lanes all through the city. And if you drive through Coventry at any point, you are very lucky to see a push bike on the cycle lane. So it's a great idea, and it's something that we should all encourage, but we have to educate people. Because we can put cycle lanes everywhere, but if I don't want to get on my bike and use a bike, I'm not going to get on my bike and use a bike. If I don't want to go by bus, I'm not going to go by bus. And I think that we've got to be really careful here about trying to do things that we've got to educate people to do. Because it is a personal choice to use every single different form of transport. But we all get in the car and we all drive the car. And going back on the point on the extra evidence on the railway, I'd be very concerned that if that evidence actually pushed this back even further than the 10 weeks that it's saying now. So I think that we need to be very careful about what we're asking for, because it could actually delay the process even further.
Okay, thank you. Just one more time, Councillor Condicle. We could debate cycling all night and go round in circles, but I'll let you come back in.
The point on personal choice is people, we've got the census report, about 1.7% of people travelling by bicycle. People are choosing not to cycle down Eastbourne Way or whatever because there is nowhere for them to cycle. We might get 10% cycling, and that'll be people's personal choice. At the moment, people don't have the personal choice, and that 10% isn't happening because we just simply do not have a route that people feel safe. So I'm not, even in Holland, 70% of people don't cycle to work. Yeah, I get that, but the people can't cycle to work at the moment or cycle to school because they're expected to cycle on the Eastbourne Way, or they're expected to cycle on the Coventry Road in Coventry and Bulkington, or we do need the provisions that those who want to can use greener modes of transport.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other indications, so we can move on to the vote. You've had the recommendations. All those in favour? Against? We will do. Okay, thank you. That is the last item on the agenda, so that brings our meeting to an end. Thank you all for attending. And if we can close the live stream, please.